Hi everyone, welcome to the Phoenix Phenomenon, where we focus on sharing the transformative process of writing a book and the journeys that authors, and in this case today, illustrators, embark on to craft the incredible books that we get to read and enjoy. So I'm your host, ghostwriter Roxanne McCarty-O'Kane, and I'm joined today by the incredible Jules Faber. So thank you so much for joining us, Jules.
That's my pleasure. No one's ever called me incredible before, so thank you. I appreciate that.
I'm glad that I was your first. Excellent. So to give everyone a rundown, Jules has illustrated more than 30 books, and most of them have been for children. He's worked with all 7 major publishers in Australia, and he's got quite a few series up his sleeve. So he is the illustrator of the WeirDo series by comedian Anh Do, for which they have won multiple awards, including Book of the Year for older children at the Australian Book Industry Awards. He's also illustrated David Warner's Kaboom Kids series, Michael Pryor's Leo da Vinci series, and Alex Ratt's Stinky stories, which sounds awesome. and some of Dr Karl's science books. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce his surname, but we all know who Dr Karl is. But more recently, Jules has created his own series, which is what we're here to discuss with Jules today. And it started with the Quest Diaries of Max Crack, which was released last year. And now his characters Max and Frankie are back in his latest release, Crack Up, which was released by Pan Macmillan Australia in March. So how did I do with that rundown there, Jules? Did I cover everything?
Pretty much, yeah. Left out 1 or 2 books, but that's okay.
Oh no, we'll fill us in. What did I miss?
There were a few sort of littler books along the way. We did there was one with HarperCollins called The Awesome Book of Rap, Rhyme and Poetry, and there was a few more, but it's really, I just say 30 plus books. I don't even know what the figure is anymore.
That's an impressive number, though, by any stretch of the imagination.
It's been a fun ride. Like, I haven't always been in books. I've worked as, an illustrator or just a general hand when it comes to, freelance illustration or whatever. But since I've got into books, it's basically all I do anymore. So, which is cool with me. I love it so much.
Yeah. So. Awesome. Okay, and so I was going to ask you that eventually, but I did see on one of your bios that you've done quite a lot of different things. So I think you've listed a retail, you've done lab assistant work, you're a barman, a yardsman, like every other, and a mechanic, like just about had a foot in every other industry, as well as being in the literary industry.
Waiting to find one I was good at. So.
Oh, sorry. What were you going to say?
Oh, still looking. That's all. So.
No. So I was curious to find out when the calling to move into books and to illustration became too great to ignore.
I guess ever since I was little, like I've loved books and reading. I grew up in a really big family, noisy, and with 5 older brothers, and good sport for them was hunting me down and dogpiling. For anyone who doesn't know, that's when there's one little guy on the bottom and all the giants clamber on top until you're dead.
Yeah.
And so I would hide out and I would read all the time and draw, and these were things that I loved to do. But I'd also seen Mr. Squiggle on TV and realized while I was looking at him, I was witnessing some sort of magic, and so that inspired me to get drawing. And I've always done it. I've always told stories and lived in my imagination more than I've sort of enjoyed living in the real world. So it's been something that I've always intended to do. I always knew that I would get there someday, but I had to pay my dues, I guess, first to get there. And I had to get good enough. I wasn't born with any great ability to draw. Nobody is. I had to learn it and study it and get good enough. So that took time. And then, I'd been freelance for about 8 or 9 years. When on a Friday afternoon, as these things happen, I had just, I'd been working in newspapers doing editorial cartoons. for daily regional papers. And within a couple of months, all those contracts dried up. They just said, we can't afford to keep a cartoonist on anymore. And so I was at a kind of impasse, and I thought, well, maybe I'll just take a break for a while from drawing. And as chance would have it, JB Hi-Fi was just opening up in town. This was in Coffs Harbour, where I lived at the time. And I applied for a job there in the movie department. I used to be a movie reviewer, a DVD reviewer. And so my working knowledge of film was good. And they were impressed enough by what they saw. So I took a job. And on the Friday before I was to start on the Monday, I got this email from Scholastic saying they had this author who's written a kid's book, and would I be interested in testing for the illustration? And I sort of replied straight away, well, yeah, sure. And this was in 2012. And so they liked what they saw, and they're in Sydney, of course, Scholastic. So I had to do everything by email. But that first book was WeirDo, and it became such a huge success that all the other publishers were willing to talk to the new guy. So I got a lot of work from that. But the first two WeirDo books were drawn in my breaks when I was at JB Hi-Fi, until I got to a point where I just went, I've got to focus on my drawing again. So so that's what I did, and I've been going for it ever since. So so that was in 2012 that happened, and then I've been sort of drawing for the last 6 years straight, just in publishing mostly. I still do spot jobs here and there. I'm a live caricature artist. I'll go to events and draw people in quick 5-minute sketches, and so I do that occasionally. But for the most part, it's just books. So I guess you could say 6 years ago. Yeah. 8 years ago, maybe.
Yeah. And what was that ride like for you? Like, this is literally your first opportunity to do a book, traditionally published book, and you've like nailed it on the first go. Like, what was that journey like for you?
That is, as my publisher has frequently said to me, your ride is not a common ride. I really got lucky. I think I know people who are far more talented than me, who are just who deserve to get that break, and haven't yet landed something like book of the year straight out of the gate, which was probably more in part to Arne than me anyway, and his name and talents, but I think it's been a great ride. Like, I've never complained about it at all, because I feel so lucky every single day to have landed on my feet in this industry, which I love. I love it so much. Everyone's so friendly, and I expected kind of a bit of animosity towards me, when I started turning up at schools and with other authors and stuff, because who's this guy straight out of the gate and he gets these awards. But everybody's just been really lovely and supportive. It's such a great community. I'm so proud to be a part of it. I really am.
Absolutely, that's awesome. And I noticed on your profile as well, you mentioned that literacy, not only just drawing and cartooning, but childhood literacy, like getting books into the hands of kids, has always been something that's very important to you. Obviously, absolutely. Now, given your history and your love of books from a young age, what's it like for you to go into these schools and see copies of WeirDo and your own books and other books that you've illustrated in the hands of kids?
It's kind of bizarre, really. Like, it is literally everything that I dreamed long ago. I've caught up to reality. The dream is real now, and to see kids, there's nothing better than seeing some kid reading your book and laughing out loud. That's, to me, that's just the greatest thing, and it never gets tired ever. You can watch that on repeat for the rest of your life, and it would never get tired. The amount of teachers and librarians and parents who have come up to me and told me, these books are so good, they got my kid into reading, like he was a reluctant reader before, or she was. it's rarely she. It's usually he who is a reluctant reader. Strangely, in my experience, but yeah, the amount of people who've said that the WeirDo series has got their kid into reading, and now they're just flying with it and reading away. It's just fantastic, because growing up, I loved to read so much, and to be able to put that joy for another kid to feel that the same way that I felt it is just, there are no words for that really either. So yeah, it's fantastic. It's a fantastic thing to do, and I feel really privileged to be in that position where I can encourage kids to read, because I feel that it's important for us to do that. We have an obligation to get kids into reading. It opens the mind in so many ways that that I don't think anything else can quite do as well as reading does. In fact, I don't think anything else even comes close to opening the mind and broadening horizons. And it's an opportunity every single day to live somebody else's life and find life from a different perspective and see things the way other people see them, and to see that your own experience is essentially unique. While we share a lot of things with other people, there's a lot that makes our own existence very unique indeed. And to see things from other perspectives is to know that there's a very big world out there. And books are the most brilliant way to see that, in a way that even TV and movies and video games certainly don't. So in a roundabout fashion of answering that question, it's a really good thing. Like, it's fantastic, and it's very humbling to have that kind of power. But as long as it's wielded wisely and judiciously, I think then it's a good power to have.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. And I'd love to find out about how Max and Frankie came to life for you, and when it was that you decided, you were going to create your own series after helping so many others with theirs.
Well, I'd written about Max and Frankie before, but it was, Frankie is actually very much based on myself as a kid. And there was a way of, when you grow up in a big family, there's a lot of material there, and we were all kind of oddballs. And so I started sort of just writing this stuff down, just as short vignettes, and then I'd sort of put them aside and ignored them, because I've always been writing down scraps of ideas and stories and things, sometimes with no intent of going further with them, and others sometimes all the way, but no publisher has yet picked those up. Yeah. And one evening, it was a Wednesday, it was May 24th, 2017, I can tell you the exact date.
That's very specific, yeah.
I think because I've told this story so many times. Yeah. I said to my wife, look, I've got to get a project. I'm lying here on the couch every night. I'm drinking beer and I'm watching movies, and it's no good. I've always needed a project. I've always needed something to be focused on, exterior to whatever I'm working on. But my day job. And so the following day, I sort of had an epiphany in the shower, where I was, as people do. And I was like, oh, I've got to tell this story, but I'm going to do it like a diary. And so I started writing it by hand. Originally, I wanted the whole book to be written by hand. And I took these stories and I just sort of translated them as I went, handwriting them, just putting in a doodle wherever it sort of fit the narrative, until eventually, a week later, I had about 30 pages. And I thought, oh, hang on, I better slow down here, because if I keep going and I do a whole book, I might take it to a publisher and they'll go, oh yeah, but you've done this all wrong. We can't publish this. You have to do it all again. So as chance would have it, I was working for Pan then on a Dr. Karl book, and I had a meeting about the illustrations and stuff, and I took in the pages that I'd done, the 30 pages, and I just to ask advice afterwards. If I was to present this, am I doing it right? Do I need to separate these layers or what?
Yeah.
And my publisher at Pan she looked through it and she said, "Oh, this is fantastic. I love this. Do you mind if I keep a copy of it and show it to some people on the weekend?" And I was like, "Sure." And this is a week later, mind. So that was Thursday, the following Thursday. So it's been a week. I thought no more about it and went back to work at home. Come Monday morning, 9 a.m. first thing, Claire calls me again and says, "Look, I've shown this to people across the weekend. Everyone's flipping out over it. Do you mind if I take this to acquisitions on Wednesday?"
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, "What is happening? You know, I've been rejected so many times in the past.
Yeah.
And this is moving so fast." And on Wednesday came and went. I actually had a school visit. I was at what's the school, Abbottsley, that Wednesday, and a bunch of other authors were there, Tristan Banks and Matt Cosgrove and Deborah Bella, and I was telling them all about it. And they were like, "Yeah, well, good luck and all that." But I didn't hear, so I didn't think anything had come of it. You know, acquisitions weren't interested. The following day, Thursday afternoon, I got an email saying, "Look, everyone's behind this. We want to give you a 2-book deal." And I was like, "What?" So 2 weeks from starting from absolute zero, in 2 weeks I had a 2-book deal. So and my publisher at Scholastic, her words were echoing in my head. You know, "Your ride is not like anybody else's ride."
Yeah.
And so it was a really great experience and very exhilarating. But the irony being that I've actually written a lot of books where young girls were the protagonists, because I really like writing girls. And I've got a daughter who's 12, and she's very inspiring in her adventures. And so the irony was that these two boys, myself as a boy and my fictional best friend, became the heroes of this story. And so it was because originally Frankie was named Jules, just like me. It was Jules Faber, and Max had wandered into the Jules Faber family. And my publisher didn't like the idea, so we changed his name, and it's a funnier name anyway, I think. So it was a great opportunity to record all that family lore, and so much of it appears in the pages of the book. A lot of it's things that happened to me when I was a kid. A lot of things are things I wish had happened to me, and a lot of things are things that I changed the ending to suit me better. You know, it's making a kind of fantasy life out of my own experience. But very much, you know, and I was really afraid what my family would think of it, because you know, some of them don't come off in the greatest light. But I tried to keep it warm and friendly at the very least. But everyone loves it, so that was exciting.
That's awesome.
Did I answer the question?
No, of course, that's perfect. So I was going to ask, you know, particularly with your other books, I imagine, you know, the manuscripts that you wrote that were rejected, there would have been a journey behind creating each one. But this one just seemed like you were just on fire. This was the book that had to be made.
I suppose that's how it feels too. It's and it's so organic, just the process. I started doing the second book in the same fashion until I got about halfway through, and then I'd found Max's voice without having to handwrite it at the pace of a 12-year-old or 10-year-old. It's never ascertained how old they are, but you know, somewhere between 10 and 12. And so once I found that voice, I could just use the computer to type it and write it, and the process became a lot faster because I wasn't stopping to doodle and whatever. So for each subsequent book, we've had to reinvent the way that we make the book. So the first book was done very much based on a whole manuscript that I'd done the original layout for. But then by the second one, it was just text. So I just had to select what I wanted to draw and then trust the designers to follow the original template. And the designers did a really wonderful job. And I believe that it's about as close as we could possibly get it to my original vision, if you want to call it a vision. But like originally, as I said, I wanted to do it all handwritten. But they said, we can't do that because you can't edit that, and you can't, if it's translated to another language, you can't do it that way either. So, and I wanted to get a font made of my handwriting, which isn't the handwriting I write with. It's a special handwriting that I just created for the book.
Yeah.
But in the end, it became too difficult to get a font made. So we went with existing fonts, and that's still cool,
What would you have called the font, just out of curiosity?
It would have been called the Jules font, I think.
Yeah, awesome.
It's because that's part of the story I tell too. It would have been so cool. It would have been the Jules font, and everybody uses the Jules font, and all my emails would have then been in the Jules font.
Oh, totally.
The font I use forevermore. But not to be.
Yeah. Or yet, you might find a use for a Jules font in a future series.
There'll be somebody watching this who'll go, I'll do it. I'll make a Jules font. I'll go, all right.
Yeah, awesome. How cool would that be if that actually happened?
That would be so cool.
Yeah. Awesome. And so I'd love to find out, you've talked about how the story evolved and how your processes have evolved, but how did you evolve through this whole journey of, becoming an author of a series? Like what was your Phoenix phenomenon, so to speak?
I'm not sure I understand my own story. And, it's very easy as the illustrator to hide behind the skirts of the author. You don't have to suffer any of the slings and arrows or none of the critique, because essentially your job is to make the author look good. Not that they don't already, but to embellish that good, if you like. But as the illustrator and the author, there are no walls to hide behind anymore. You're exposed. And to be honest, about a month out, I had a real anxiety attack about that, because I suddenly had no choice. This book would be out there in the wild, and there was nothing I could do about it anymore. And and that sort of made me panic for a bit. And then I went, well, hang on, that's actually what you want. You wanted to tell this story, and you wanted it to go out into the universe and be told. And as the second one was coming out, I felt that come back again, but it was nowhere near as pronounced or scary. And I was like, no, I got this. This is what I signed up for. This is exactly what I came here to do. And I tried to explain that to other people, and not a lot of other authors get that. But
really?
But some do. So it was a real thing.
I assumed it would be something that everyone would experience, because like you said, you're like laying out a piece of yourself bare for everyone to kind of decide if they like it or not, almost. That's
right. And I did realize long ago, when you work for yourself, that you accept rejection. It's part of the job. There is, you just put it aside, and you realize that, well, that rejection is one step closer to my next acceptance. And so rejection is I'm not afraid of that. And once I tied that to that, it was like, oh, you know what? Yeah, if people don't like it, there are going to be people who don't like it, and that's fine. There are going to be people who think, it's not as funny as you think it is, and there are other people who are going to think it's way funnier than I think it is, or weirder or stranger or whatever. And that's what makes our world so wonderful, is everybody has a different opinion about it, and that's okay. So, so I learned all that by becoming an author over just an illustrator. And when I say just an illustrator, I don't mean
don't downplay that. That's awesome.
I meant singularly, as a singular thing, rather than a dual entity. So that was something nobody prepared me for. I had to work through that one on my own. But that's good too. I've always said throughout my whole life that when the student is ready, the teacher appears, and I believe that wholeheartedly, because it's happened to me so many times. As soon as I've wanted to do something, for example, with books, I was very interested in learning about layout and how books worked. And a lady approached me and said, look, I've done this job my whole life. I've written these stories, and I need somebody to illustrate them for me. And it was the perfect opportunity right when I wanted to do it. And so I ended up illustrating 4 books for her, and learning along the way how layout works. Like, I knew layout, I'd worked in animation, I knew how to properly lay something out, but to make it ready for print and press, that was a good education for me. So I'm always open to that, and when I want to learn something new, I'm waiting for the teacher to appear, and sure enough, there they are. So I think if we're all open to learn things and ready to learn, then the universe is ready to help.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that a lot. Excellent.
Very, very deep for a Thursday afternoon.
That's great. So what are you hoping to learn next? Do you have something else that you're striving for now?
I've got a vision for this series, which before the first book went to press, they actually asked me to sign on for a third one as well. So I've got a third book on the way in this series.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that I get to go further with it, because I still have tales I want to tell. But I've got an extended universe where all the stories and books that I've written previously are all in this same universe. Even the really way out ones. Like, I'm a bit high concept most of the time with my stories, because I allow my train of thought to just keep going and going and going until it falls off the tracks and there's a big train wreck. But more often than not, I'll get this germ of an idea, and I just let it ruminate and sit there, and then boom, the story arrives, and then I just factor it into this universe, and so I've got this great sort of, like Marvel does, where all their comics are connected in this vast, sprawling universe, and I have this vision of being able to tie all these books to this thing. So I'm hoping that the series takes off, and the first one sold pretty well. So I'm hoping that it allows me that opportunity anyway. So
that sounds awesome. I'm intrigued. That's so cool. Awesome.
But I was just reading last night a YA book, and that my daughter gave me to read, and it was a comic. It had been converted into a graphic novel, and I thought, you know what, I could do this. So because they're all about ghosts and vampires and shiny things. And I thought, I've got this story idea that I've had for ages, and so I decided that's what I'm going to do. So I'm starting to write a novel as well at the same time, which will be peppered with illustration, but it's more a YA book, a humorous YA book, because it doesn't seem like the YA books are all that comedic. I don't know. They always seem to be sort of
trending away from that. Yeah. I feel like we do need to bring it back again for sure. So.
Yeah, and I'm not to say that there aren't funny YA books. I'm sure there are. It's not really a genre that I read a great deal of. But as my daughter is getting older, I'm starting to. But humor is so much fun to write that and to read. I think that maybe kids don't just want to read stuff about sparkly vampires. Maybe they want to read stuff about not just dystopias all the time. Maybe there's a funny story where everything goes wrong but they still save the world. I don't know. So maybe that's what I'm hoping this one will be anyway. But it's pretty high concept, so we'll see.
Awesome.
Another one in the rejection pile, most likely.
Don't put that out there. Excellent. So I'd love for you to kind of fill our viewers and listeners in on Crack Up, on your latest release, and what sort of journeys and experiences that Max and Frankie get up to in this one.
Okay, well, there's the cover, of course.
Yep, lovely.
No foil on the cover of this one. We wanted to have a different look to it. I wanted it to feel as eclectic as a kid's sort of, because each is the diary of this boy Max. I wanted each book to sort of, because kids live in the moment so much, they don't follow themes the way that people might for years, they follow themes for days or maybe weeks. So I wanted it to look different to the first one. And the publishers were cool. So, but in this one, it's still the same format inside. It's a 4-month journey of Max. He's been living in the town a bit longer now. He and Frankie have this established friendship. And from the first page, it's action packed. And they're going home from school, and a meteorite comes flying overhead, full of blazing fire and small ones behind it and everything. And it hits the earth with a giant boom and rattles all the windows. And that becomes their first quest, is that they want to hunt this meteorite. And they have all these theories, and they, along the way, they meet people who help them to become or to find the location of this meteorite. Because as I mentioned earlier, I really like writing girl characters. Max and Frankie this time who are pretty clueless when it comes to girls at that age, as boys tend to be. They meet these two girls who end up becoming friends with them, and so Max's sort of clique is growing, and their quest, the group of questing friends, is growing as well. So they go on this hunt for a meteorite. The school has a principal who lives very much in an anti-technology state. He's very much a Luddite, and yet somehow he has allowed the school project to make a movie. So Max has been trying to get a smartphone for ages, and he finally gets one from his parents on loan, and they shoot a movie together. That's one of their quests, and very happily for me, they go after a world record. And I wanted them to go after a world record, and I didn't want an existing world record. I didn't, because the universe that they live in is similar to ours, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
And so everything is just slightly skew-if from reality, the reality that we know. And so, all the crazy world records that they research, are really out there world records. And the one that they go for is so very basic that. And it was something that we did not go for a record or anything, but we did it as kids in the playground, and it becomes something that they will start to pursue because of a curious incident which occurs the week before they come up with the idea, which I'm not telling anything here, am I? I'm not giving anything away.
I was gonna say, you're all in, Jules. This is awesome.
Yeah, so the boys, they I don't want to give anything away because it's exciting, but they find, like all summer, everyone's trying to figure out, it's a school project to go for a world record, and nobody can come up with a good thing that all the kids can do until there's an accident on the little bridge, which there was an accident in the first one as well, the first book, and there's an accident on this bridge, and that leads through a chain of events to the world record attempt. So it's a bit more action packed, this one. Like it's really, as I make a joke in here at one point, it's almost like a sequel, trying to stuff more into it than in the first book. And so that was what I wanted to write, and because I like to put those little kind of Easter egg asides, break the fourth wall here and there as well. A sly wink to the reader,
That's awesome.
So it's there's a lot going on, but of course the underlying theme of this whole thing is friendship and adventure. And because when I was a kid, everybody was out in the world. You didn't come home till the street lights came on, as was the old story. Now every kid's sitting at home on their phone or playing Nintendo or whatever. And I wanted to remind kids that there was a whole world out there, and it's filled with adventure. And it doesn't have to be extraordinary adventure. There's adventure in the everyday, and that's what I've endeavoured to put into these books, is that this everyday adventure that's just out there waiting. So
Awesome. Yeah, and you get to, have an adventure yourself, like channel your inner child and have a bit of fun with it in the creative process.
My inner child's pretty much been running the show for the duration, really.
That's
I
awesome.
finally, they're finally getting the kudos that they deserve.
Awesome. So that's amazing. And I'd
Mm.
love you to take us to the moment where, obviously there's a lot of planning going into each book and a lot of illustrating backwards and forwards. But what was it like to particularly hold a copy of your first Max book in your hands, and to have that tangible thing to hold on to and go, oh my God, I've just done it.
It was, it is an indescribable feeling to witness a dream become reality. Um, because everything, and this is what I tell kids when I do school visits, everything that we see in the world that was made by people was once just an idea in somebody's head. The Harbour Bridge, a TV set, a telephone, everything was once just an idea. It didn't just appear one day. And the power of idea is extraordinary. And so to have my idea become reality, and to have somebody else put faith in that to make it reality, it's a very humbling experience. It's really it's intense, and you get whenever you deliver a book to a publisher, before they hit the shops, you get your author copies which arrive in the mail.
Yeah.
And it never gets tired opening that box. It never gets tired to see your work not only acknowledged, but to see it in the flesh, made real. But when it's when it's something that you are wholeheartedly responsible for, it's beyond that. It's next level. And it's extraordinary feeling. And again, I don't believe that there are really words to truly describe it, because it's just such a exhilarating feeling. But more so to have that vision that you had, that unique idea, for others to say, yeah, this is worth doing. It's very humbling and terrifying, but exhilarating. So and exciting. It's all those things, but it's you don't want it to tank. You want it to deliver for the people who put faith in it. But at the same time, it's just exciting to see it made real. And as it's no thing for Mary anymore. She's just grown up on it's Dad's job.
Yeah.
And she's 12 now, as I say.
Yeah.
But it's not uncommon for my wife to go, this looks just like one you'd see in the shop. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, it does. So yeah,
it's definitely the idea that you're going for. Yeah.
Yeah, you want it to look like something that people want to buy.
Exactly.
So it's a overall, yeah, it's exciting, terrifying, but humbling at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I don't know if other authors feel that or not. I'm sure they must. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'll ever get to book 30 that I've written and illustrated, and it'll wear off. I certainly hope not.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I feel like if it does, then you've got to move on, right? That's when it's lost its magic.
I think that's right. And if you don't have the magic to put into it, then nobody's going to read it. Who wants to read it if you don't, if you don't have that same passion that drove you to tell the story to begin with? If it's just a job now, it's time to look for another job, maybe.
Yeah.
So I never want that to happen to me. I've never wanted that in my life, ever. I've never wanted it to feel like a job, like I'm walking off to this voluntary enslavement every day. I want to get up and be excited about not just I've got to go to work, but I get to go to work.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the feeling. I don't want to go away. So
absolutely. And you had a double whammy this time around too, didn't you? Because the day that Crack Up was released, you also had the latest in the WeirDo series come out the following day. Is that right? Or was it the other way around?
Yeah, the very first time ever that I've had two books come out 2 days or one, a day apart.
Yeah.
I've had, like last year, I had a book out every month for 5 months in a row, but this is the very first time I've had 2 books, boom, boom, like that.
Yeah.
So, and WeirDo coming out on April 1st. I don't know if that had anything to do with anything.
I'm sure that wasn't planned at all. Yeah.
But of course, now I don't know. Like the third book in the series, as yet untitled, will, in my series, that is.
Yeah.
I haven't heard from the publishers yet if they're moving it because of all this nonsense that's going on. So we'll see. But hopefully, I still get to have it out in September. But yeah, who knows with everything, the way things are going at the moment.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We'll just be patient and wait and see. At least I got plenty of time to work on it. So
yeah, well, this is true. Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. And I was just out of my own curiosity wondering, when you're working as an illustrator, are you literally only working with the manuscript that is sent to you, or do you actually get to do a bit of collaborating with the authors and, get a feel for what it is that they're going for and that sort of thing?
It's different every time for every author. For some series, I just get prompts, draw this, draw that. That's fine. Yeah. Other times, I've had the publisher just say, do whatever you like. As long as we have, 25 or 50 illustrations, do whatever you like. And it's because I was a cartoonist for so long, you inherently know what's going to make good drawing. You can just draw somebody meandering down a street, but that's pretty dull. But if you get to the action scene, that's what you want to draw. It's also fun to draw. But that being said too, there are things that I hate to draw. So if I'm given free rein, I won't draw the things that I hate. So
what do you hate? What are no-goes? What are no-goes for Jules?
Okay, people riding bikes.
Okay, yeah.
It's the worst. From any angle, you've got multiple layers where things have to be behind things or in front of things, and it's annoying as hell.
Yeah.
Crowd scenes, bad. People sitting around the dining table, also bad. Or on a couch or something, because every time you've got more than 2 people, I've got this philosophy that everyone should be doing something different, because that's real life.
Yeah.
So it becomes a sort of a real mental hurdle to get through, and the bigger the crowd, the longer it takes, and that's annoying. But B, there's the whole mental aspect of creating all these different people, and C, time is money. The longer I take to make a book, the less money I make on it. So at the end of the day, I'm still a businessman.
Of course. Yeah.
That's why I don't understand Martin Handford, who is the creator of Where's Wally. I don't know how he does it. That is beyond me. And he brings to the table time and time and time again.
Yeah.
Everything is new, unique every single time. It's fresh and new, and it's funny.
Yeah.
He's some sort of cartooning, illustrating god. I don't know how he does it. He's made a deal with the devil or something. But
yeah, or he's a sucker for punishment, however you want to look at
it. He probably loves it. He probably loves it. There are people who love just drawing people, like caricatures, and there are people who just love drawing one comic strip, and that's cool. Yeah. Whatever you're into, I'm into that for you. But but for me, it would drive me up the wall, and then some.
Yeah.
So more power to him, I say, and he's done very well out of it. So good on him.
Yeah, well, there's no one else like him, really, at the end of the day. So
a lot of copiers have come since, but no one delivers the way Martin Handford delivers. That's for sure.
Yeah, awesome. Okay.
Kudos, Mr. Handford, if you're watching. Well done, you.
Kudos. We'll get a copy in his hands. Awesome. And so I'd love to find out if if you had any tips, whether you wanted to gear it towards illustrators and or authors, for maybe aspiring authors or illustrators to help them, get some motivation and to act on any inspiration that they might have.
If you're an established illustrator, always keep hammering publishers. They're always looking for illustrators. They always want something fresh and new, and they're always bringing out books. There's a market for it, and for what you do somewhere, you've just got to find the people. And there's more than just the big publishers. There are hundreds of little publishers too. So that's my advice: is never give up. You've got to keep going. You can't, you know. There's that old expression: you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. There's a lot of ways of saying that. You know, you've got to be in it to win it, or you know, somebody has to win it, or whatever. You can't win in a game that you're not in. So keep trying, and you will get rejected. You got to remember that's part of the job. It's not personal. It's just the way it is. And for anyone who's not established, I would say continue practicing always, every day. You will continue to get better. You can't get worse at it. But if you aspire to get into publishing, then you have to be able to deliver something that's new and unique, or not even that necessarily. Your voice is unique. It doesn't matter. Your style is unique. So you've got to practice that and find your voice, find your style. And it's there. It's waiting for you. You just got to catch up to it. So, but the most important thing I find is just that stick-to-itiveness, if you like, that positivity. It's going to feel like it's raining crap on you a lot of the time. But sorry, my cat just wandered in. But you know, you've got to get past that. You put up your umbrella and you get back to work. You know, it's going to feel that way, but it doesn't mean that it is that way. So you've got to stick in there. You know, I've known a lot of great illustrators, people far more talented than me, who have dropped off along the way because, you know, it got too hard. And I understand that completely. But, you know, if you're passionate about it and you believe in it and you believe in yourself, as you should, just stick to it. You know, that's my advice, I guess.
Awesome. No, thank you.
That's what I did. So
yeah, absolutely. So we know, you know, it's a tried and tested pathway. So we'll go with that.
For one person at least, yes.
Awesome. Thank you, Jules. And just to wrap it up, I'd love for you to, you know, give people a bit of a heads up on how they can get hold of your fabulous books and start getting their read on.
Well, it's perfect time for reading with everyone stuck at home and nothing to do.
Yeah.
This book is crack up, as we know. If you've missed the first one, you don't need to have read it to enjoy this one, but it can't hurt, because there are clapbacks to the first book. Just as the third one will have clapbacks to books 1 and 2. You can get it at any good bookstore and even any lousy bookstore, I'm pretty sure. Not that there are any lousy bookstores; they're all fabulous.
Nice save.
But and a lot of bookstores are still delivering, especially your local independent bookstore, I believe. So do try to support them where you can. Otherwise, I'm pretty sure that some of the big places are definitely still working. I know Booktopia definitely is. Because of the warehouse, but I don't know if we can quote actual business names in there or not. And they haven't endorsed this comment at all, or paid for content.
Thank you for that disclaimer.
Merely relaying information I've heard.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
So yeah, but any major bookstore, any minor bookstore, most likely.
Absolutely. Yeah, and how can people find you if, you know, when we emerge from this cloud and schools are booking, you know, illustrator talks and author talks, how can people find you?
I can be found with the Children's Bookstore agency. They're in Glebe. I'm with them, so they can book me for school visits through them, or they can just find my contact details on my website and just call me direct. And if I'm available, I'll probably say yes. So,
awesome.
So yeah, I'm not too hard to find online. So yeah.
Excellent. All right, that is great. Thank you so much for your time today, Jules, and for sharing so many fabulous insights into, you know, your journey, and also some fabulous tips too there for people who want to take their journey to the next level.
Sure. That's been absolutely my pleasure. Thank you, Roxanne.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right.